Okay. Next, we have discussions with town staff. Okay, I'll just check with, anything, John?
Nothing.
Cynthia?
No,
You're
Mr.
all
Chairman.
set? Okay, Andre?
All right, either in your packet or on your monitor, we discussed at last week's meeting the RFP for the third-party review for the Woodmont Commons Plan Unit Development. And at last week's meeting, I believe the board concluded that it wanted to review it between last week's meeting and this week's, as well as taking any input that we may have received from either the applicant or other interested parties. And we received a few of those, one from the applicant and I think a few comments from the board. And what I'll do, if Mr. Chairman, if that's all right with you, is go through each section and alert the board of what has changed from last week, or what some of the proposed amendments to the RFP were, and what we're prepared to move forward with, and then we can take any comments from the board as to if you see a need to change the RFP accordingly.
Okay, yep.
Can I just ask a question before we get in? There's two in the packet, so is one the original and then the other one is the changed?
Yes, the packet that looks like this is the one that we modified based on staff's recommendation to the planning board at last week's meeting. And the one with the red on the front is one that we received from the attorney representing Woodmont Commons. And what I'll do is, and if there's any amendments that the board had submitted, then I'll alert you to those as we go through those. So starting with the front cover, one of the recommendations from the applicant was to change the request for proposal from planning and engineering review services to planning consultation services for Woodmont Commons Plan Unit Development proposal. And staff is recommending that we stay with the planning and engineering review services, but that is a change that has been proposed.
Guy, how does the board feel?
I got to ask a question before we go too much further. So the copy that we got in the mail that's red
Yes,
is the copy that was marked up by the applicant's attorney?
correct.
Okay, so the black was your original?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I have to ask a question. If we don't believe that consultation is acceptable, that we want to leave the engineering and the other, what was it, and the review engineering, planning and engineering review services in, and all the components that would go along with that, is it even, I mean, as a board, I think we should have that discussion, and if we decide that that's not the way we want to go, then I don't think we need to go through the rest of the proposal, because the proposal simply takes out all that engineering.
Yeah, and it had some other changes that I think, some of the changes that were suggested by the applicant's attorney are reasonable, and we want to make sure that the board is aware of that, and some we just feel is inconsistent with, I think, direction that the board gave me with regard to what it wants in the RFP.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify what's
Yes.
actually on the, in the documents that you're looking at tonight, and I need to look to Andre. The one that's up there now is what was presented by the applicant.
Correct.
The next one are the changes, all the changes.
All-
It's
correct.
the final proposed document.
Correct.
And so,
The one dated 12/14, correct?
the one dated 12/14. We have 12/7 available if you need to see it for any reason, but I think, my understanding is that we've moved well beyond that, taking into consideration all the comments that were received from the planning board, plus the applicant, plus a member of the general public, so.
Yeah.
So that's what's here to
Town,
view is
the proposal.
the applicant and then the sort of compilation.
Okay.
Okay. So you want-
Board clear on that?
No, I'm not.
Not really.
So the 12/14 is the latest version that we're
Yes.
looking at here?
Yes.
So this is the first time we're seeing it?
Yes.
Okay, and the 1214 is the one that you recommend?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So, and that takes into the pieces from the applicant that you believe should be included in
Some of their
Proposal.
suggestions, as well as the suggestions received from board members.
okay.
Where are you seeing a date on this?
On the
It's on the file name.
File.
So the one that doesn't have any red on it is the one that we're referring to as 1214.
Right on the cover.
Correct.
The one that they have in the
So if
office.
there's no color on the cover, that's the one that, the most
Most of
recent,
it-
1214.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, the only reason I
Yeah,
question-
could you identify yourself for,
Yes.
or come to the microphone so people can hear you?
Sure.
That would be good.
Yes. And one of them.
I'm Ari Pollack with Gallagher, Callahan, and Gartrell. I'm attorney here for the applicants tonight. The only reason I'm interrupting and asking for clarification is because I have the same concern as the board. I'm not certain which version is which. I received by email last Wednesday or Thursday what I think was the draft that staff had provided to the board at last week's meeting. I then provided a redlined version of the initial submission by email to staff, and I think you've received that in some form. I now understand that there is a third version that tries to either accept or reject some of the suggestions that I had made and perhaps others had made, and I haven't received any of those further drafts.
Neither have we, this
Neither
is
have we.
it.
This is the first we're seeing of it.
Okay.
And I think it was probably, Andre had worked on it today, and I know,
Yeah, and we kept on receiving comments up to the last minute, and I believe the board left the last week's meeting with the conclusion that whatever we receive, we'll bring back to the board, and that's what we're doing.
Yep,
So is there a hard copy available tonight that shows,
Yes,
What-
there's one, and I believe Mr.
and
Chapman
that's
has
where
one.
what I picked up from your desk there does not appear to me to have a file name path on it. And that's why I'm not certain if I'm looking at the appropriate document or not.
That is.
It's
that
not
is
in the
latest
Word
and greatest.
document, it's in the PDF name. It's not on the document itself,
I see.
the date.
Is yours red on the front?
No.
If
Well,
it's
I
not
have-
red on the front, then it's the latest, it's the
It's the latest
1214
draft.
FBA. I think that the red line version, which was the penultimate copy, has red on the front.
And if I can go through each page, then I think we can clarify which is which, and.
Right, because
but
there
that
is-
is the latest draft, is
Right.
the one
there is
that.
color within the document itself,
it's multicolored.
indicating the changes.
Okay. There's red, there's yellow, there's blue.
I think they have black and white copies.
No, there should be color.
Yeah,
You made the copy, in-
Identify yourself for our record.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, my name is Michael Kettenbach. I'm the proponent with Woodmont Development. I'm concerned tonight that we're looking at another draft of a RFP when we have before the board an application for acceptance of a planned unit development, which statutorily should have been acted on over 30 days ago. And we received the proposal from the community for the RFP almost 2 months after we had filed a formal application for the acceptance of our PUD. We have another draft tonight. I'm wondering what takes 60 days to iron out an RFP prior to something that really statutorily should have already been approved and then discussed as to how the RFP would have been handled and proceeded in an orderly manner. I'm confused by the manner at which we've been put off for another 60 days with no end in sight for a process to start, to which we would be gracious and understanding and clearly know that this is something that would take in excess of 65 days to approve. We've already spent 2 years showing our patience, but we really wanted to start a process tonight to have a clear understanding from the community that we're properly before them. It's like putting what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Statutorily, we believe that we're properly before you and came here tonight to talk about what is statutorily before you. I'm at a loss as to where we're at tonight. I would like some direction maybe from the board as to how we're going to proceed this evening so that we can then sit back down, go watch you deliberate, ask questions of us as to what our thoughts might have been on the RFP and the process. And then maybe we can get to whether the board is going to even entertain our statutory application this evening. And I'm not trying to do this in a manner that's adversarially. I'm just trying to understand the procedure. Am I right, or? Okay.
I was just, I had a question, I guess, for you. Last week when we were here, Attorney Michaels, who I think represents you, indicated that, this was, he had seen the RFP first time, but there had been no contact from you to Andre regarding the RFP, so.
That's incorrect.
Well, that's what he said. Okay, so
well-
I'm just going by what he said. Okay, so, but that's part one. Part two, forgetting that, we had Andre's and the staff's RFP, proposal, and I saw your counter proposal to that, striking out the word engineering, and frankly, from, just my point of view, I don't know about anybody here. I'm not an engineer. I don't think anybody else here is an engineer. I think the purpose of having engineering review is, kind of basic. And if we're at that kind of differences here, I'm not sure that, the timing really is an issue because, we're at two different points here. And I, as one board member, am not comfortable going forward with something as highly technical as this without an engineering review. I mean, frankly,
A second engineer.
well, a second engineering review, I wouldn't be happy without an engineering review of a 5-acre subdivision. You're proposing 600. So with all due respect, I think, if you're here and staff's here, I'm really not concerned about that we didn't get to this 30 days ago, because all that would have been was 30 days ago we would have been here and here.
Those are good points, and I'd like an opportunity to respond to them, Mr. Chairman.
And by the way, I mention that just because of the repeated references to statutory by the applicant.
No, I heard what he said.
Yeah.
My response to that, and I'll try to take them in order, our frustration has been that after 2 months of having filed this application, the RFP draft comes out of staff the night of a meeting where the project is not on the agenda, and that Attorney Michaels happens to be here. He picks up a copy, I receive it by email, and out of the blue, it's dropped on us. And it's not, there have been requests for progress throughout. I could show you a number of emails that ultimately led to my correspondence and communications with Attorney Mayer, who represents the town, asking for progress updates. I started early in this process explaining that we'd had any number of project consultants working on this application. We wanted to make sure that those individuals would, number one, be present when the board discussed the application, so that if there were questions about a part of it that they worked on, they'd be able to answer them. But also that we would have an efficient review of the project, including what Mr. Kettenbach is referring to, which is the statutory requirement for action on the completeness of the application within 30 days of it being filed. And the board will remember back to the November discussion we had about creating an RFP for an independent review, where I made the comment that we were interested in the board having a quality review process. Everybody on this board was going to need to recognize that this was somewhat of a different animal than a subdivision or a site plan application, and generate a comfort level that we were proposing something that fit with the regulations, and that frankly we had supplied what the ordinance was requiring. That relates to the merits of the application. It doesn't relate to whether or not we have filed something that lines up appropriately with the checklist in the ordinance. One of the reasons that we've struck the reference to engineering review is because this isn't a subdivision application. Whether it be 5 acres or 625 acres, it's not that application. It's also not a site plan application, which I understand would be a typical application received by this board, which would require some review, and I understand it's been the town's practice to have a review prior to acceptance, so that the board is informed by its review consultant as to whether or not the checklists, which in those instances require hundreds of items be included, are present or not. In this case, there are 25 items that are mentioned in the PUD ordinance. It's our position that we have satisfied the request to submit information on all 25 items, or in the instance where the items are just simply catch-all, give information that the board requests. There haven't been requests made to date, and we would supply information when those requests were made. So our position on statutory acceptance is that it's an administrative act of measuring what we have supplied versus what is required. In terms of the engineer versus the planner, who's necessary, it's our view this is not a subdivision or site plan application. This is an application for a master plan under the PUD ordinance that requires a planning review to make sure that the zoning structure that we're proposing will accommodate the future subdivision and site plan applications that will be filed.
And I think that staff's position is that it's not simply just a checklist, but it's a preliminary review by whatever entity, and here we've chosen a third-party review. Okay, so, and while I hear what you're saying, that it's your view as to what constitutes completeness, I think we have a different view of that.
Well, I certainly respect that. What I would say, however, is that we have no issue with the board receiving a third-party review. In fact, we're willing to pay for it.
And this has been reiterated through the number of discussion sessions that we
Yes.
had.
Positively.
Through the course of, over the past year. I just want to call attention to, in our ordinance, 2.8.8.1.1, is that, review consideration provides the provision of town of Londonderry zoning ordinance, site plan regulations, subdivision regulations, and other applicable town, state, and federal laws are appropriate. So what this does, it puts it in the context of how we traditionally review site plans, subdivision plans. So, I mean, there's some similarities, but there are also differences. But the thing is, we have to think of the continuity of how we do things, because we require third-party review for a 2-lot subdivision, for a small daycare center. And you have to remember, this is a 625-acre development, and this is a master plan. Master plans of this extent are going to require engineering also, because we want to know what's going to happen. What are the impacts? That's the important part of it.
Yeah.
And I think we have to answer those questions first.
We're in no way looking to deprive the board of an independent review. We're just simply looking to have the submission requirements that are clearly stated in 2.8.9.2 of the PUD ordinance measured against our submission, so that the board can say, just as an administrative matter, either that material is in the application or it isn't. If we're accepted as complete, we then enter the merits review of the application, and whomever is consulting with the board will provide input as to whether or not our submissions measure up with the requirements and the objectives of the ordinance.
Yeah, but that checklist has to be done in spirit of our existing regulations also. This is what 2.8.8.1.1 says, and also the 2.8.8 also is a review with the master plan. So that's a critical part, is the continuity of the whole thing, and that's what we're looking for. I think you'd want to look for that also, so that this is something that's going to fit the community.
And I'm not looking to be argumentative. I'm just suggesting that it's our view that that review occur in the review period of the application, in the 65-day review clock evaluation period that happens after the completeness of the application is determined.
Yeah, I think it's an area where we have concerns, and even our attorney has concerns also. Andre?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to take you back to when the application was submitted. It was submitted on October 14th of this year. Even though staff had offered that prior to the applicant, prior to submitting it, we might want to sit down and make sure all the ingredients are there, but the applicant opted to submit the application anyways. Once we, and that was turned in on Friday, October 14th. Subsequently, an email was sent to the applicant's representative, Attorney Michaels, requesting that, based on our based on our RFP ordinance, you're eligible to be heard on November 2nd for this application. The applicant replied, and John Michaels replied that no, it's not the intent of the applicant to cram this application down his throat. We can, we'll postpone it to the next available meeting. I said, well, all right, we can put you on for the December 7th meeting. He said, well, if it's all right with you, could we postpone that to December 14th because he will be out of town on December 7th. So that's what we did. Subsequent to that, on November 2nd, the board, through the chairman, asked me to put an item under staff review for a third-party review, and that's what we did, is that they have third-party review on that. Attorney Pollack gave me a call and said, I understand that this item might be on the agenda. I said, we have to coordinate some of our consultants on these items, and therefore, boy, we like to be present for those types of discussion. I said, well, the board had requested that that this particular item be on the agenda, so it was put on the agenda, and the board on November 2nd had a discussion with regard to a third-party review that night, and directed staff to prepare an RFP in accordance with that decision. The turnaround time, again, the board had one meeting in between the December 7th meeting and the November 7th, 2nd meeting, and at which time we just know that the staff would not have been ready to present a RFP proposal to the board at its subsequent meeting on November 9th. The next available meeting that the board held was December 7th, and the staff came to the board that night with their RFP proposal in hand, a draft of the RFP proposal for the board's review, and subsequently we handed that to the applicant. And that night, after the planning board meeting, I emailed a copy of that to Attorney Pollack for consideration. Tonight, what you have here at the direction of the board at the December 7th meeting was that if there's any input received from the draft RFP to tonight, that those be brought to the board for consideration, and that is where we're at right now. The board decided that a third-party review was going to be warranted from the acceptance level all the way through to the end. That's what the direction of the board was, and that's why, and that's what we're proceeding with. And therefore, before the board can move forward with the acceptance of this application, that the third-party review, or at least that's staff's understanding, the third-party reviewer should be hired and on board prior to that happening. I think that was clear. It was clear on December 2nd. It was clear on December 7th.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to approach this in an expeditious way, and I think we've done some acceleration of probably what it would have taken us, and
Yeah.
I think the issue at hand right now is the RFP.
Yeah.
We want to discuss that.
And that's what, and I concur with Mr. Kettenbach, is that, this has been a long time in the making. I think a lot of people in this audience have been involved with the two design charrettes that happened as a result of the purchase of this property. And I know there's been a certain amount of staff time being put into working with the applicant leading up to the application submittal on October 14th. So that there's no qualms whatsoever with regard to the amount of time the applicant has put in there, because I know staff has put in a lot of time as well. And, but here we are now. The board's decision was to hire a third-party consultant. That's what we proceeded with, and that's what we're here to review with you tonight. And hopefully we can conclude as to what the final form of that RFP is going to be, so we can move forward with this in a timely fashion, so we can, again, not extend this review period any more than it has to. And at the end of this review of the RFP, I do have a proposed schedule that I want the board to consider and provide direction.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that we haven't gotten past page 1, but
Yes.
I understand that the item on the agenda we're talking about is the RFP, but I would point out that the very next item after the withdrawn application is the Woodmont PUD application, and it states for application acceptance and public hearing. So we're not going to get very far before this issue is right back at us.
That is correct.
If you want to defer that discussion until then, I have no objection, but
No, I think we want to move with the RFP. I think we need to get the third party in place as expeditiously as possible.
but we are, according to the agenda, prepared to discuss with the board tonight acceptance of the application and to make a presentation as to why the items required by the PUD ordinance have been submitted as part of that application.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we,
Thank you.
get to the public hearing part of it. Right now, we're just discussing the RFP, which we want to get completed, and we'd like to get that, if we come to an agreement tonight on what it should be, it'll go to our attorney for review, and then it'll be out on Friday.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Okay,
Move
Andre.
forward. All right, so we've covered page 1. Moving on to the introduction.
I have a question about January 4th, the January 4th date that was proposed in there.
Yes,
Given the fact that a lot of people have off Monday, January 2nd, I propose that it be Friday, January 6th, at the very earliest.
it was a suggestion from staff to try to expedite this as fast as possible. As you can see in the representative's copy, they had a timeline of December 30th, and by providing those few extra days, it at least gives an applicant a full, solid 2 weeks in order to not only respond to a proposal, but submit a proposal to the town. So, and also January 4th happens to be a planning board meeting date, the first planning board meeting date. So that's why it was suggested that January 4th be there. So we'll have a second planning board meeting in order to consider other aspects of the RFP.
I'd like to leave it at January 4th as well, only because I think people are wanting business and they'll do the job. I mean,
Yes, that's to keep it moving along as quickly as we can and giving it proper review. That's also a board meeting. We can open bids that night. It'll be a public meeting, and the bids will be public review also.
So in the introduction, again, there are several textual changes that were made by the applicant, which we mostly agree with the exception of the third paragraph down, the sentence that says the board anticipates the review work to begin as soon as the consultant is selected, and then the applicant had put in anticipates that the review and consultation work begin as soon as the applicant is selected. And again, I would recommend to the board to move forward with the proposed by staff.
Board comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move along.
Dropping down to background, again, there is a few textual changes that were offered by the planning board, which I made, and that has to do with this capitalizations and wordsmithing. And then on the sentence, paragraph starting with on January 4th, 2010, there were some amendments suggested by the applicant, and again, the staff doesn't have any issue with those proposals.
Okay, board all set? Okay.
Yes.
Move along.
Scope of work, this is where you'll find most of the differences between staff's copy and the applicant's. And I'll go through staff's copy. And again, at the beginning of the scope of service, there were some suggestions made by planning board members, and those are highlighted where it says they assist in the review of the application for completeness, planning and engineering, qualitative review of the PUD application called Woodmont Commons here and called PUD application. And then there's this insertion of applicants. The gist of the, one of the significant changes is that, and I'll start at, if the PUD application is accepted by the planning board as complete, the consultant will then be retained to provide assurance that the application is, one, complete and may be accepted by the board, and two, subject matter expertise, which is wording that the applicant had chose to use and we accepted. Guidance and assistance to the board in the reviewing the merits, design, technical aspects, and that's different from what the applicant had put in there. The applicant material and the project to confirm the plan complies with all aspects of Londonderry's PUD ordinance, see Appendix C. Balanced with the design and the technical review of the PUD application and the PUD ordinance will be the input of the residents, property owners, and stakeholders of Londonderry, including the applicants and other regional interests. And the applicants and other regional interests is something that the applicant had suggested that we agreed with. And staff, in regards to the PUD, the timeframe for this contract will start from the board's hiring of a consultant pursuant to this RFP for the review of the PUD application for application acceptance, and end at the time the board makes its final decision on the PUD. And the applicant had wording, and I'll go back to actually to the top of that a lot of the wording with regard to the owners of the PUD applicant to ensure the application contained, those were all stricken out as you can read. To provide subject matter expertise, guidance, and assistance to the to the board reviewing the merits of all elements of the application material and the project, and to confirm the plan complies with all aspects of the PUD ordinance. Balanced with review of PUD application and the PUD ordinance will be input from the residents, property owners, stakeholders of Londonderry, including applicant and other regional interests. In regards to the PUD proposal, the timeframe of this contract will start from the planning board determination of completeness or its selection of a consultant pursuant to this RFP, whichever is later, and end at the time the board makes its final decision. And therefore, you can see the contrasting views of what the staff was recommending and what the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just summarize what we were looking for in that paragraph, all of the differences of what was suggested by us versus what was accepted by staff relate to whether or not the application would be accepted as complete before or after the consultant was retained by the board. We were simply stripping out the information relating to having the consultant comment on acceptance because it was our position that we hoped that would happen tonight.
Right, and from our November meeting, there seemed to be an agreement, even from you, that, the application acceptance will be part of the third-party review.
We had certainly hoped this process would move more quickly than it has.
I think all of us wish, but...
We also recognized our ability to grant extensions of the review clock after the acceptance, and when we get to the next agenda item, I'll be happy to share my discussions with Attorney Mayer on those subjects. He and I both had some ideas of how we could accommodate the board's desire to build in more time for that, all based upon the notion that we were looking for acceptance of the application.
Yes.
Just so, and not trying to be argumentative, but the contrast with that was that the applicant, the staff's position was that of the direction the board gave us, is that our understanding was that the board wanted the third-party review consultant on board to help with the acceptance of the application all the way through to the final decision. And so that's why you'll see a lot of contrast in there, as Attorney Pollack had indicated. Moving on to the second aspect, starts with responses.
Can I ask you a question, Andre, before we move on? Going back to the time frame for this contract, that last sentence, are we clear on that? It reads to me like the contract's going to start, or the time frame is when we make our selection, and it's going to end when the board makes its final decision on the PUD application.
Correct.
I mean, what is that final decision date? Is it 60 days from the time that we accept the application as being complete?
65 days.
65 days?
Yeah. at whatever time, whether that time frame is extended by the applicant or not. That's why I just left it at final decision.
But the start date is when? When we accept the,
When we hire as far as this RFP is concerned, when we
Yep.
hire the consultant, that's when we sign a contract with this consultant, that's when it starts. The time frame for this consultant starts, and it ends when the final decision is made. I said I had some wording in there, but I like the wording from the planning board a little bit better, because it starts at the hiring and ends at the decision. So the second part of that part, it would be the responses to the RFP shall be made by the firm or teams of firms, specialists in the field of land development, planning, and engineering, having an in-house or subcontract professional staff of multiple disciplines necessary to support the review of Woodmont Commons PUD application, including but not limited to planning, architecture, urban design, including experience with new urbanism concepts, traditional neighborhood development, et cetera, civil engineering, traffic, pedestrian parking consideration. And this is an item that was inserted by the applicant that, again, staff accepted consideration the provision of essential municipal services, financial and economic services, and such other capabilities or services as may be necessary or useful to fulfill the requested services identified by the board. And then what will be inserted, a full set of the application material going to be found in, and we're going to insert there the website site so they can look at all the material that's been submitted. And moving to the what the applicant proposed is that most of it, the land development planning, which was struck out, was engineering. So it would read, shall be made by a firm or teams of firms and specialists in the field of land development planning. And again, engineering struck out, having in-house or subcontracted professional staff or of multiple disciplines necessary to support the review of the Woodmont Commons PUD. And the rating was pretty much the same as I read before. Although civil engineering, after it says new urbanism concept, traditional neighborhood development, civil engineering was struck out, and financial and economic services was also struck out in the applicant's copy. And getting down to the consultant's review of the PUD. And the staff's recommendation was that we have items A through G. The consultant's review of the Woodmont PUD will include, but not limited to, the review of the Woodmont PUD application, review of the Woodmont Commons 2 design charrette information, review of all planning board minutes of all workshop meetings and discussions held in regards to the Woodmont Commons proposal, review of all ordinances, regulations, policy, long-range plans associated with the Plan Unit Development Ordinance, attendance and participation of all board meetings at which Woodmont Commons would be heard or discussed if required by the board, and that's something that the applicant suggested and we and staff agreed with. Attendance and participation at all meetings at which Woodmont Commons PUD application will be reviewed and discussed if required by the board, and other topics, other topic areas as deemed appropriate by the consultant and the board. And the applicant's copy had all items A through G identified, but they struck out items B and C in their copy. And the other items, D through E, are as the same or as agreed upon by staff.
Andre,
Yes.
is there any reason that E and F cannot be combined into one and just the applicant's participation at all meetings at which Woodmont Commons will be heard or discussed?
Well, again, the original wording of E and F is, one was planning board meetings, and obviously we want the consultant at all our planning board meeting, which the
I
applicant section.
understand that, but then we're turning right around and saying that they will be at all meetings.
Well,
Why
we
not
originally had
combine the
staff
two?
meetings.
I understand, but now we're striking staff.
Okay.
Why not just combine it into one and label it all meetings?
Meetings in which Woodmont would be discussed,
Yes.
you know.
That,
whether it's
that
court meeting or-
includes planning board meetings, staff meetings, any meeting in which Woodmont Commons will be discussed.
I'm not sure why you took out the words planning and staff. I would suggest that those go back in.
We're not the ones that took it out.
Well, even town council meetings too, or,
What's
you
that?
know. I think you should specify the three meetings that might be held where these would be discussed. Town council, planning board, and
Meetings with staff.
staff. And you can combine it into one bullet, but I still think
Yeah.
that the three types of meetings that might
Yeah,
happen.
I would agree.
Staff, we were the ones that
They're the
struck
ones
the
that
word
did.
staff. We struck the word staff because there may be other groups that have meetings relating to this project. Like, for example, this board found that it had regional impact. So the Southern New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission is likely to have a meeting. That wouldn't be a board meeting or a staff meeting, but it would be a meeting that relates to the project that you may very well want to have your consultant participate in.
And certainly the Southern New Hampshire Planning will be involved with this project.
I'm sorry?
Southern New Hampshire Planning will be involved with this project.
Oh, yes, we understand that.
Mr. Chairman, that type of meeting would be facilitated by staff, so I think it would be covered.
Okay. That would be covered by staff meetings.
Correct.
Well, I mean, I guess you could specify every type of meeting that is possible, or you could say meetings covers everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I.
That was our
see your
point.
That was the thought.
I think if you just say all meetings.
We weren't trying to
then-
limit it.
We don't want you to limit the ability of your consultant to
Right.
be at all meetings relating to the project.
Yeah, and that's why we agreed with the wording, because I think it covers everything else. Even
Yeah.
though it may
Yeah.
sound redundant, but I
Makes
think it covers it.
I think, combine it into one and just say all meetings, and I think you've got everything covered.
Mr. Chairman, I would
Yes.
point out that we were looking to strike items B and C. Those items relate to historical meetings for the charrettes and other conceptual discussions that led up to the applications. There's probably thousands of pages of information relating to that process. And since we're interested in an efficient review of whether or not our application measures up with the ordinance and the ordinance's requirements, we did not want to bog down whoever the selected consultant is with going through a lot of history that may never have made it to the actual application.
I agree.
I do too.
Personally.
Well, I think it should be there, because in case they want to look at it for reference or whatever. Because history is always a good reference, and I think what we would impress upon our third-party reviewer is timeliness, you know.
It was our view, I certainly respect that some perspective would be appropriate, but it was our view that rather than call those out as items to be specifically quoted by those who respond and bid, item G, which was a bit of a catch-all for other topics deemed appropriate by the board and the consultant, would allow the consultant to say to the board, we'd like to review X, Y, and Z, and the board can say, we were there, we weren't there, that's helpful, that's not helpful.
Yeah, I think leaving them there, and then we can work with the consultant on it, and so when they shouldn't get bogged down on what's happened in the
I
past.
think what we're trying to say is that whoever's trying to respond to the RFP is going to have to take into consideration the number of hours and the amount of reading and the amount of catch-up that they're going to be provided and having to do to respond to the board. And that in turn will affect their quote, monetarily and time-wise, for both of us.
Pull the board.
Okay. How does the board feel about leaving B and C in there? I'll start with Rick.
Don't need it.
Don't need it. Tom?
Am I correct that most of the design charrette information has changed significantly since you've made your formalized plan?
There was no question that it was an evolving concept that
Right.
changed throughout all of those meetings. Reading the first meeting is not going to provide much insight on what the
Yeah.
last meeting
No, I think I
concluded.
agree with you then, yeah.
Dana?
I would say, I agree, take it out. The applicant, if they want the history, they know it's available, they can go after it.
Okay. Gary?
I think it should be
Okay. Linda?
Yeah, I agree with removing it.
Laura?
Me too. We've said include but not limited to, so they're free to look at that and it might be useful, but I don't think we need to include it for the purposes of a proposal.
Okay, Lisa?
I'm okay with striking B, I'm not okay with striking C. C is planning board minutes. I think that's essential. Granted, they should be doing their homework anyway, but
That's
I don't
something they could
think that should be
I'm sure they'd ask for. Maria?
I agree with Letha. I think the same thing. B, you could take out B and leave C. And then G kind of covers other topics as deemed appropriate, so.
Yeah. Well, the majority has taken out B and C.
Okay, and from a staff perspective, it's some historical perspective was what we were looking to have, so the whoever gets brought on board has a good history of what has transpired, so as we look forward, yeah, I think they'll have an even better perspective of what we're looking at, so that was just the attempt.
Okay.
So take out B and leave in C, is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I would like to amend mine to, I think C is valuable,
Okay.
the minutes of the planning board. I mean, I don't think that's an outrageous amount of material to have to read either.
Laura?
Just for the purposes of getting a proposal, I'm not sure C is important, but I could go either way.
Okay. Lynn?
Yeah, I'm okay with leaving C in.
Okay. Dana?
I'll go with what I initially said.
Okay, Tom?
I would think he'd look at the minutes if he thought he might be useful,
Yeah.
but I really think B should be out. Yeah.
Okay. So it's leaving C in,
All right.
and B is struck. Yeah, we're going to get through this first, Jack. This is before we...
Do we reserve time on that particular point when we go back to it?
Do you have a comment on it? Yeah, why don't you come to the microphone, and then we might as well take it while we go along.
Jack Falvey on the removal of the review of the two design charrette information for the review of the project. The charrettes made some very, very specific proposals and accusations in the town, which are the fundamental concepts of the entire village concept, i.e. that the town was a victim of urban sprawl. Secondly, the numbers proposed at the charrette, 1,300 dwellings, have not changed since the initial proposal. Many superficial changes have gone in. So I think we should not try and erase history, and that the RFP should include the review of those initial assumptions, because those initial assumptions were not accepted by the people of the town. They were presented de facto and then constantly reviewed in various meetings but never changed. So the fundamental concept of the proposal has remained identical since those charrettes were presented, and there were some very, very big questions to be answered about the assumptions that they made in their initial presentation. So I would recommend that that item be kept into the RFP. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I agree with you, but I'm overruled by the board.
Yeah, Art, I understand what Mr. Falvey says, but I guess those assumptions are still part of what we're looking at. That's
Yeah,
why
and we can always
that's
take
why
care of
I
that
say what I say.
under G, other topics as deemed appropriate by the consultant and the board. So we'd make clear to them that there are, if they want to review those. And certainly we have a consultant, you'll spend some time with him too, Jack.
Well, I mean, I understand where everybody's coming from, but the bottom line is that, to the point for whoever's going to submit a bid, for them to have to go look at all this stuff prior to submitting a bid is only going to delay them, and it's something that we can recommend they do after we've hired a consultant.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But it's definitely part of the record and should be, part of the review process, my own opinion.
It's not even part of the record, though, is it?
Yeah.
Part of what record? The charrettes.
Well, it's a public record.
Right.
It's a public record. It's, everyone knows it's there. I'm sure a lot of people were there also, so they know.
So just for us keeping score at home, B is out, C is still in.
C is in, and I think the design charrette will be definitely mentioned to them as part of G. Get around it that way.
Okay, so moving along.
No, not
Okay,
yet. I still got some questions with that. What is the deliverable we're expecting from the consultant? I don't see that specifically listed anywhere. We say review, but what's a review?
The review of,
You know, what's the output we're expecting from the consultant?
well, actually, we want two outcomes. One is to review the application material to make sure it meets with our guidelines within our PUD regulations for acceptance.
Well, that's what we're asking them to do, but what are they going to deliver back to us, saying that they've done that review and what their assessment
Going to
is?
deliver to the board a recommendation that, one, either the application meets our requirements, therefore the board ought to accept it, or not recommend the board and identify the items where it's deficient.
I don't see any language in here jumping out at me saying this is what we specifically expect the consultant to deliver to
Yeah,
us.
And I guess that's, what's implied with application acceptance.
Yeah, I'm
is
just
that-
nervous
yeah.
about implication. I'd rather have something spelled out concrete there.
I think what you just said is perfect to add to that, someplace in this RFP. You know, it's the board's expectation that the consultant will provide a recommendation.
Some come back and say, yep, we agree, and they've done the review, and then they walk away. You know, I mean, that's a gross exaggeration, but I just think we should nail down what our expectations are. And when we expect them. You know,
Yeah,
we say the contract is done in a certain period of time, but when do we expect their assessment to be complete?
Well, the assessment for the first part would be complete if the board accepts the application. Either accepts it or they identify what's deficient. And therefore, obviously, if they identify what's deficient, the applicant has the ability to correct those deficiencies, resubmit the application, and then it moves forward. And then from that point on, in accordance with this, then they're gonna be reviewing the merits, design, and technical aspects all the way through to a recommendation for a decision on the application, whether that's up or down.
But when do we expect that?
So Andre, is it realistic to say, if they come back on January 4th, and we have all these proposals, and we open them up and we hire somebody, that by January 11th, which is the next meeting, they would have an opinion as to whether or not the application is complete? Is it, that's all I'm just, I think that's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
Or
Is it-
should
is
it be
it February
February
12th? Is
12th,
it
the
whatever
first
the
meeting in
date
February,
is?
the second meeting in
I
February,
think we
whatever?
should set a specific expectation when we want
Right.
to see
Or do
this
we have a third
information.
meeting in
I'm
January?
gonna get to that, timeframe in a sec, I guess.
Okay, I didn't see it.
Should it be part of this submission, this RFP? Is it part of this RFP, what you're gonna get to?
Well, actually, yes, it would be included in the RFP if, actually, I don't know if it's really, should be included in the RFP, but I think it's a timeframe that I think if the board agrees to, that's the timeframe we're going to adhere to.
Yeah, and I think this
Well,
should be in the RFP,
yeah.
so
They need to
So
know,
that they
If
know.
we're gonna put an accelerated schedule
Yeah.
that we're gonna expect the consultant to adhere to, then it should be part
It will
of the
be
RFP.
Appendix E.
Let's
Lynn.
set the
It'll be in there.
expectation.
yeah, if they're gonna bid for it, they need to know
Yeah,
what
they
the
need to
dates
know.
are.
They need to know what kind of time frame they're bidding to.
Yep. Okay. We moving on?
move on,
Okay.
move on.
Getting to proposal submissions. Again, the staff is staying with the Londonderry Plan Unit Development Planning and Engineering Review Services. Again, the applicant's proposal is to replace that with consultation. They had a timeframe of December 30th for the responses. I had put there Wednesday, January 4th, again, being, I guess, almost a week later, but it's at a planning board meeting in which we can get all the proposals, and that night, open those proposals. And again, I will refer to my time schedule once I'm completed with this. But January 4th is what we're recommending. And as far as the submissions, the addition from the applicant was that, what from staff was that the proposal be submitted to my office within the time frame submitted, and the applicant had added that with a copy to the applicant sent via first-class mail and electronic mail to the following: R.B. Pollock, at Gallagher, Callahan, and Cottrell. And staff is still recommending that we move forward with it, with the understanding that the applicant will be working for the planning board.
Yeah, they should come right to the board.
Correct.
We were simply looking to be copied on what we're going to be asked to pay for.
Oh,
And I think there's provision in there that when they submit their proposals, we were requesting 7 paper copies and 1 electronic copy of the proposal. So anybody, obviously the applicant will get a copy of that, but anybody else who would want a copy of that.
That's not how it worked tonight. I got this for the first time when I sat down in this chair. I would prefer that the people submitting bids send me a copy, and then I know that I've received exactly what they've submitted.
The bids will be sealed until Wednesday,
yeah, they'll be
Until we open them
sealed until they're
publicly.
open right here, so no one has access to them ahead of time.
I could certainly have them that day then, or shortly thereafter, but I would like ultimately a copy of exactly what's been filed from the applicants or the submission parties.
Andre?
What I suggest is that, given that we're going to be, if the board's agreed that we will opening them up that night, a full set of those copies of those proposals will be given to the applicant at that point in time.
Right. So when we open the bids, they're there for anyone in the public and you also to receive them. Okay. Move along.
Andre,
Question?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Andre, are you aware that it's just a typo, but the 2011 is written under the first January 4th date on that one?
Oh.
Should read 2012.
You got it. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Len.
Oh, no problem. The last paragraph of that section of Section 4 says, "Respondent shall be available to confer with the board during January 2012." What are we looking for there? What's the intent of that sentence?
Yeah, and actually, staff is in agreement. I think it alerts those the consultants that we're on a tight time frame, and therefore they should be ready. If they're going to submit a proposal to the town for this work, that we're going to look to turn this around relatively quickly, so they should be ready.
Do we want to give
So
it?
the 15 people that are going to respond to this all have to be here at the meeting?
My understanding is that during January 2012, so if our timeline does fall within that period, is that, once we open the bids, we're looking to review those, interview, and have a decision on the applicant, consultant, within a very short time. So if they're going to respond to that, I believe that wording is saying that be prepared.
Do we want to, I think we should put a
And I
specific
think
date.
if I'm wrong in that, please.
Yeah, I was the one that suggested that language. My point was simply to imply that there's some urgency to have folks available so that the decision process can move forward. I don't know if the board is going to want to have a select number of bidders come to a meeting and conduct some sort of a question and answer session. I don't know if you're going to form a subcommittee. I didn't know exactly what process you wanted folks to subscribe to, but I wanted to warn them that their availability would be an issue.
Yeah, and I just think we should put a specific date there. I'm not sure if that has to be a meeting that's publicly noticed or something like that. I suspect it does. And I hate to say just during January, because January 31st and January 4th are distinctly different things.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I think the board will have to discuss with regard to that, because a couple things, according to my proposal, will need to take place. One, I think we will need to, in order to stay to the timeframe that I'm suggesting, we'll need to have a subcommittee. Again, the board only has 2 meetings, and therefore, I think we need a subcommittee, even though those subcommittee meetings will be public meetings, and anybody's welcome, but I think in order to expedite this, we'll need a subcommittee, and again, that will be part of my schedule and proposal.
Yeah, we're going to need that flexibility to expedite this.
Can we settle on a date tonight and make that date part of
I
this?
think Andre's got some suggestions.
Yeah.
that,
Or even a series of a few dates if we are not sure how many applicants we're gonna get or what have you. But yeah, I agree that it would be good to give a few dates and say, be ready to be available on one of these
No,
nights.
absolutely. I read Lynn loud and clear, is that I think we have to have a dates as to when things are going to take place, so we know what to expect and when to expect it and when the decisions are going to be made. So,
But you're asking for dates, though. Let me understand what you're asking for, Lynn. You're asking for dates of when they can be available for interviews?
No, telling them when to be available. I mean, we're driving the
Yeah,
car, right?
January.
No, so January 2nd, January
Well, if it's
5th?
due the 4th,
I know,
right?
but January,
Okay.
January
No, but
31st?
if we say get on a plane and fly here or whatever,
better not
to
be
interview with
flying.
us for a few hours during the day on such and such a day during
I mean,
business
Andre
hours.
has a
But you have to
timeline.
be there too, is my point.
I understand.
Okay,
Well-
so you're ready to break up in your calendar and,
Might I interject?
I know my calendar as it is today, so if it's January 23rd, I won't be here.
okay.
But, but be that as it may.
That's why we have alternates.
Exactly, but I think we just need to have some real finite dates.
Yeah, and if I can get through
Around a
this,
lot of these
and I will-
activities.
I
Forget
promise you,
about it,
I'll
you're
get
not
to
getting
that.
through it.
Okay, we're doing good, just finish up, then we'll do dates.
Okay, Mike?
I think that when you set the date, you're gonna have to, when you open these, you're gonna have to have a subcommittee go through them and make sure that they're qualified. And you're gonna have to make sure that you're comparing apples with oranges. You're gonna have some crazy applications for review, and you're gonna have to reject them at hand. And so the people that you're gonna invite back, you're gonna feel that they're the most qualified, and then you're gonna choose from those most qualified, based on the money they're gonna spend, the time, and their qualifications and past history in dealing with, quote-unquote, this type of development. And I think that that's something that happens, from what I've heard and what has been approved by this board, is January 4th, you're opening the proposals. At that point, you have to weed out the wheat from the shaft, and then bring the kernels to the meeting
Yeah.
for the independent review.
Yeah, we've just been
with the
through
board.
the master plan steering committee through that process, so.
So,
Staff is very familiar with it, so I think they have an idea what, in their mind, and that's what they're gonna have to convince us, and we will review it also. Okay, Andre?
Okay.
No, I just make one quick comment too. Mike, part of the reason of setting a date is to drive us as well.
excuse me?
Part of the reason of setting a date is to drive our activity to make sure this happens.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that, thank you.
Maria, did you want to say something?
Well, no, actually, I was going to say exactly that the January 4th meeting, we're just going to be opening up the proposal, so it probably doesn't make sense to have all these people come at that meeting. I would think the soonest would be the next meeting, that you would want to
That's
have some of the people that you've,
Because it's gonna take, and one of the things I think the board has to discuss also is use of the subcommittee, to be able to be
Right.
flexible within that very short period of time to work with staff to review. We need to get through this first. Okay, come to the microphone, please, and name and address.
Ann Champa, 28 Wedgewood. Do I understand this correctly, that you're going to give about 2 weeks to get this proposal out to prospective consultants, have them all returned by January 4th? We do have something called Christmas and, holidays in between. Is that what I'm hearing right?
That's the timeline that we're working at.
Now, this consultant you're looking for, don't you think there should be a little more time involved in selecting him? Because he's also going to be looking over the whole proposal afterwards, not just accepting this?
We're not hiring them on the 4th. We're just asking
That's
people
when we open the bids.
to come, to propose that they want the job, to apply for the job.
Right, 2 weeks over the Christmas vacation. I'm sorry, but this sounds like shades of 2 years ago with this December, January meetings for the PUD ordinance. It really does.
Well,
The rushing it and not looking over, backtracking over all we've gone through the charrettes and everything else, not even exposing them that. Maybe you should send it to them and then maybe the most qualified person will, or business, will have the, will actually look through it all.
we're looking for a very capable organization that can do this.
Correct.
And, I'm sure we'll find something through the bidding process.
Within the next 2 weeks.
But all we're looking for in that time is to find out who's interested in
Right.
doing this.
Right.
We're not going to be
Right.
selecting them or expecting them to have looked through the charrettes. We're just asking who's interested in being considered by that time.
Okay.
Yes, and development of an RFP response can take longer than 2 weeks for something of this size. I believe that's the point that's being made.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And some people do have that Christmas week off for vacation. I know maybe other people have their nose to the grindstone,
Some
but,
some do and some don't, so.
right. Just
Business has to
remember-
go on too, though. Business has to go on too.
Remember the importance of the selection and the applicants. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Andre.
All right, the next item is limitation of liability, and, the applicant had proposed some wording, and the staff, and work with our legal counsel, found it's acceptable. Neither the town of Londonderry nor the applicant assumes responsibility or liability for costs incurred for the recipient of this RFP and responding to this RFP, or responding to any further requests for interviews, additional data, et cetera. And that has been, with the exception of nor the applicant, that has been template wording that we've had in our past RFPs. It's just the addition, and I don't think it's gonna hurt the proposal. And
Proposal
and
format.
I think on item J, in the proposal, we're in agreement with the insertion under conflict of interest, where it indicates in red, applicants, officers, directors, managers, members, or others, and inserted into that conflict of interest section. And we're in agreement with that.
Andre?
Yeah.
I think above the word manages in red, the word current should be currently.
You say that again? I'm
Second line.
Second, in conflict of interest in J.
sorry. Yeah,
Second line, proposer, and it says current after that, should say currently.
currently. Okay, gotcha. And then the proposed evaluation, the changes recommended there, the staff doesn't have an issue with inserting with recommendations from staff. And then on the last sentence, the insertion of the last paragraph of this, of the RFP is the applicant and their agent and representatives may attend any interviews of prospective candidates. And that's been consistent with what we have done in the past with regard to, not only the applicant, but anybody who wants to attend those interview sessions are free to do so. Are those public meetings, or are they just, they are public meetings, fully noticed? Noticed, yeah. And and again, on the Appendix A, we just reinserted planning and engineering review services and struck out consultation. And obviously, on the applicant side, they have consultation, and they struck out engineering review, and which is basically consistent from the front page to this page. What will be inserted in the Appendix B would be the concept of the Woodmont master plan. This is the master plan itself that shows what at least the overall concept is. Obviously, within the RFP, direction will be given via the website to, to where the documents are, the full documentation that was submitted on October 14th. And Appendix C would be the, Londonderry ordinance, the PUD ordinance that would be inserted. And lastly, in Appendix D would be the recommended schedule of services. And what staff is recommending is this. Starting with tonight, December 14th, 15th, finalize the RFP, establish a review committee. And I hope that the board will establish that review committee so we can keep this on task. December 15th to 18th, we'll advertise the RFP. We'll be able to advertise in the Sunday Globe, and we're going to be, our opportunity to put it in the Sunday Union Leader has passed, so we're going to get it into the Union Leader either on Monday or Tuesdays, Union Leader. And as well as we're going to be posting it on the Office of Energy and Planning website, much like we did with our master plan, and it has broad exposure, as well as the association with the Northern New England American Planners Association, and put it in there as well.
Any professional publications?
As far as the professional publications, as far as the time constraint is concerned, I don't think we'll be able to get it in there with enough time for it to be read by, that's why we're targeting the newspapers and
The
the
Municipal Association?
The Municipal Association would be in one of those, LGC.
Are there any online professional?
Well, and that's where the Northern New England American Planning Association is an online.
Planners Web and,
Yeah.
a lot of blogs in the planning world.
And so the advertisement will take place between December 15th and 18th, now and Sunday. January 4th, deadline and opening of the proposals. January 11th, review proposals, interview selection. Again, they give us a week to look over the proposals with the subcommittee, come back on the 11th with a short list of who we think the top applicants are. Between January 11th and 19th, interview and a recommendation at a special meeting on January 19th. The 18th, I believe, is the third meeting of the month, which I believe that is the ZBA would have this room. Therefore, the 19th, from the looks of the schedule, this room will be available for the planning board. And then on January 30th would be another special meeting, which would be a Monday, to meet on the application acceptance.
Mr. Rudd?
Yes.
I would like to recommend that the possibility that we might try to put it on the website of the Urban Land Institute. There are a lot of East Coast and Mid-Atlantic and Midwest reviewers that are very familiar with this type of process, and I wouldn't want them excluded because of their depth and breadth of expertise. And I think, if you can, you can, and if you can't, you can't. But I think that the Urban Land Institute is probably one of the best resources for possibly putting the RFP on their website.
And it also will include on the American Planners Association. There's the Northeast American Planners, but there's the American Planners Association, which, as a member, I can upload RFPs on there as well, as I did the master plan. So
Okay.
I can do that as well and
I
add
think
that to
the Urban Land Institute is the ones that generated all the books that all these urbanists are familiar with, and that's the reason I wanted to make a recommendation that at least be looked into.
Yeah. I know at the design charrette, there were a number of engineer planners that had, were interested in working for the town. I got their cards, I passed out info all along to Andre and everything. See what because it seemed to be there was definitely strong interest in that community.
Yeah, I just mentioned it because when we started looking for people for the charrettes and experts to guide us, we looked nationwide, but, and that was the first place, that was the first source of information that we went to, was the Urban Land Institute.
Yes, definitely. Sure it gets on there, Andre.
So that is the updates, contrasting views of the updates and what the staff is recommending. And my understanding, just to quickly go back through, is that with regard to the scope of work, it looks like the board's in agreement with moving forward with it, with the exception of eliminating item B and keeping item C. This is a textual change on one of the dates, and adding, if I'm clear, as to adding clarifying language as to the expectations.
Are they going to deliver to us?
Yeah.
And when do we want it?
Now, as far as when do you want it, the timeframe that I laid out, would that give you a clear understanding, at least up to acceptance? After acceptance, we have 65 days thereafter in order to obviously review and make a determination, so there is a timeframe associated with that.
But once again, I thought one of the things we were looking for from them was to help us determine if we accept it or not.
Yeah, and that's where it gets us from now until January 30th. January 30th is what we're, the meeting that we're proposing is for that determination on application acceptance.
Okay, so I missed that, I'm sorry.
Well,
January 30th meeting?
Well, you said January 11th is going to be the interview selection, the list of the top applicants, right? January 11th?
Yeah, review proposals and interview selection. yeah.
Okay, and then January 30th is when we are going to try to have a special meeting on application acceptance?
Actually, no, yes. January 11th, review and interview selection will be made at that planning board
Right.
meeting. And then between the 11th and the 19th, we will interview that group and make a recommendation to the planning board at the January 19th meeting.
Right.
And then between January 19th and January 30th, that's where the applicant who we hire as a consultant will do its review and be prepared on January 30th to make
Okay.
a recommendation to the planning board.
Would that be enough time, though? I mean, from the 19th to the 30th, I'm a little concerned. Is that going to be enough time for them to review and be able to be prepared for the 30th?
I think so. I mean, you have 11
I
days.
don't,
to
I don't,
Acceptance.
I don't know,
Yeah.
you know,
Again, they're not.
the specifics.
Yeah, they're doing the review for acceptance and make sure that, and again, quite frankly, there's two ways it can go on the 30th. It could be a recommendation for acceptance and we move forward with there, or it could be a recommendation not to accept and identify the items that are deficient.
Okay, and that's just the first step in a very long process after
Correct,
that.
correct.
Right? So there's many steps that their services are going to entail. This is just going to be, the first step is
It's going to be
helping
the
us with
first
the
part of what
acceptance.
we're hiring the consultant to do is
Okay.
the application acceptance,
And
correct.
just so it's clear to everybody, then they will be on board from that point until,
Till the final decision is made on the application.
okay. Thank you.
Any more questions from the board? Come to the microphone and name and address, please.
Ron Dumont, 47 Beauregard Lane. Just a question, is there any contingency plan here as far as the dates? You guys are setting these things in stone, like you're gonna get qualified responses to your RFP. To the gentleman's point, sometimes it takes a few days to review the RFP and respond to it. To the lady's point, you're kind of shoveling all this stuff together. If you don't have qualified people, or the board doesn't select qualified people, it's gonna go far beyond these dates you're talking about. Why push for January 4th when you can go to the 19th and review and open them during that period? It gives more people time to respond so you can get in more qualified applicants.
I think once we get there, I think we're going to have to determine the flexibility. This is like a goal. If you don't have a good goal, you'll never get there.
And Mr. Chairman, if we don't get enough proposals by the 4th, we can always discuss that at the 4th meeting, right?
Yes, right.
I would just point out, in reviewing the draft, that there is Roman 11 on page 7 that discusses the right of the town to reject all of the proposals, be it because of insufficiency of number or quality, and to essentially have a do-over of some kind, adjusting for whatever the board perceives went wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's been wording that we've had in all of our RFPs, that if we don't get qualified applicants, we can make sure that we do.
Okay. You all set, Andre?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so what we'll do is we get this out tomorrow and then send it to our attorney for review, and we'll follow the schedule. The only other question I have of the board is a subcommittee, and who would like to be on that? We can't have any more than 4 people.
And before you do the subcommittee, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to confirm, there was some discussion, but I didn't hear any resolution. This RFP would be posted on the Urban Land Institute website?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If that's the board choosing, yeah, I've added it, but if the board,
I don't have no objection.
you have no objection?
No problem.
Yeah. Now, I guess the only issue I would have is that sometimes, like the APA, you have to be a member of the APA in order to post the RFP at no cost, and therefore, therefore I can do that. Now, I don't know if the Urban Land Institute has the same policy or not, that you have to be a member in order to get there, but obviously I'll find out.
Yeah.
I mean, for tonight, we're comfortable with the board's stated preference that it be added there. If there's some impediment, we'll be happy to discuss it.
Last but not least, I'm a member.
Okay. There's a source.
That's of any help.
Okay, so I think the subcommittee's going to be flexible and meet at varied times and probably during the day even.
So I'd be interested in being on the subcommittee.
Okay, Mary?
Are we primarily talking about between the 4th and between the 11th and the 19th?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It'll make some space available in your day, evening.
Well,
I'll do it.
okay, so Mary, Letha,
If it was daytime work, I could do it.
okay.
Well, are you available during the day, Letha?
I am.
Are you?
On most days,
I mean,
yeah.
afternoon, not school day,
I'll
hours, but after school day.
I'll get a babysitter. Yeah.
I mean, even if we.
I'll carve time.
It has to be a public meeting,
It's open to the public, but I mean, it could be
Public,
scheduled
but we haven't-
anytime.
right?
Yeah.
Just how the, did it with
But I'm
the
just saying, she
Master
has
Plan
kids
Steering
that we
Committee.
could go to her house.
Yeah, with the Master Plan
That's
Steering
pretty
Committee,
nice.
we've had them open to the public, but they haven't always been televised.
Correct.
But they're
public
clearly
meetings.
posted and marked and open to the public. If anyone wants to attend, they can.
Okay, so Mary, Laura,
You know, honestly, if it's outside of school hours, as much as I'd love to be involved, I don't think that I can commit to something that's going to be that demanding that week.
okay. Okay. We can be flexible with it. Anyone else can just email Andre. But probably 4 is getting toward a quorum. 3 is probably more flexible. Also,
Definitely like the board's involvement, obviously.
okay. Anything else for discussions with town staff?
No, I think I monopolized as much as time with the boards that I
This is
need to.
Long discussion with staff, but I think critical. Okay, so we'll move along with the agenda. Continued plans, this is just an announcement. Tammy M. Varani, 2004 Revocable Trust, Tax Map 17, Lot 34, which is a continued public hearing for a 5-lot subdivision and conditional use permit, was continued from November 9th, 2011 Planning Board meeting, has been withdrawn by the applicant. And moving along, next item, which is a public hearing, Pillsbury Realty Development LLC, Tax Map 10, Lots 15, 23, 29C-2A, 29C-2B, 41, 41-1, 41-2, 42, 45, 46, 47, 48, 50, 52, 54-1, 58, 59, and 62. This is an application acceptance and a public hearing for a formal review of the Woodmont Commons Planned Unit Development Master Plan. And this part, it just deals only with acceptance. We're not dealing with the plan at all. We're just going to be reviewing whether the acceptance is complete or not. And it's just that simple determination that we have to make. Andre?
Yeah. In regards to the acceptance, obviously, it's a staff recommendation, given obviously, the time we just spent on the RFP and the direction that that the board has given staff, that we engage a third-party reviewer for this application from application acceptance until the final decision. Obviously, it is staff recommendation that we postpone the acceptance of this application until such time we have that third-party reviewer on board and hired.
Yeah, that's been advised by our attorney, as we had discussed with him last week, and has been in communication with you too, Ari. So,
Yes, if I could comment on this issue.
yes.
this feels like deja vu all over again, because what I'd like to do is just bring forward the comments I made at the beginning of the RFP discussion, so I don't have to repeat all of our position. But I do wish to have the record reflect clearly that we think that 676-4 subsection C, subpart 1, obligates the board to review the application for completeness within 30 days of its submission, and that time is at least now, if not earlier than now. And when the board's agenda announced that completeness or acceptance of the application would be on, we prepared a presentation to demonstrate for the board's satisfaction that the items within 2.8.9, the section entitled Submission Requirements within the PUD ordinance, are in fact addressed by our application and our submissions, and that whether the merits of those submissions amount to an approvable application or not, I understand, will be the subject of consultation with your retained expert. But it's our position that the application could be accepted as complete because those components have been submitted and are present.
Yeah, I think it's what, from our attorney in this board's position, is that we really need the third-party review to determine to our satisfaction the completeness. Because looking through our whole PUD ordinance is a little more complex than that, than just a simple checklist. And that's why we want the closeness of the review for acceptance as complete.
And I wish to just bring, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to bring forward the other portion of my explanation previously that talked about the differences between a PUD application and site plan and subdivision and other traditional planning board applications, and that in our view, this is creating a master plan for a zoning overlay. The types of reviews that have been done on those other applications certainly would be appropriate at the time when applications under this zoning plan are ultimately submitted. And that is not what we're proposing now. We're proposing a PUD master plan. With respect to concerns that the board may have in accepting the application now, but then being squeezed on the review clock side of the equation, having that 65-day period start to run on you. I will share with the board, I did have discussions with Bart Mayer, the town's attorney, that the applicant would be willing to toll the running of the review clock until you had an opportunity to retain a qualified consultant. You would not need to be concerned about using up that clock during the selection process. I also spoke with him about finding some way to memorialize our offer of extensions of that clock should good faith efforts require more time, recognizing that this is a large project. Just place that on the record. Thank you.
Should we go ahead with this proposal? What happens if we don't accept the application as being complete? Where does that leave them right now? I mean, do
You
they
mean
just-
tonight?
Tonight.
One, it means that obviously the board has taken no action on that and didn't take jurisdiction over this application, thus starting the 65-day clock. And again, at the direction of the board opted under 676-4B, indicated that it wanted to move forward with a third-party consultant, and including in that third-party consultant was the application acceptance at the board.
Right, my question is, what if we choose not to accept the application tonight? What happens to them? Where does it go from there?
Then the project application acceptance will be delayed until, right now, if we stay by the schedule that we laid out with regard to the RFP, it would be January 30th.
But do they have to start over, is my question? Do they have to?
No, the same information that they have now, it will be the same information will be viewed once we bring an application on. There's nothing new that they have to do with regard to their application, unless, once our third-party reviews it, and if there's deficiencies in it, those deficiencies will be identified, and then the applicant will have an ability to address those deficiencies and resubmit.
But having been spoken to about a statute several times this evening, if we say we do not accept this application as being complete, have we met the criteria under that statute? Because we've given them a response.
That's not being complete, that is a decision of the board, that the board can make.
Right. So, and then that stops that 30-day window that we should have adhered to, or we're given permission to extend because we discussed about having the RFP and everything else. And then, go ahead, because I'm just trying to understand it.
Okay, the reason that you wouldn't probably choose to not accept the application is because you need to provide very concrete reasons as to why the application was deficient, and where
Why the
they,
application was deficient, is that what you
Deficient.
said?
Deficient,
Yes.
correct.
You know, I apologize. I am old and my ears are awful, so I really need you guys close to the mics so that I can hear you. Are you right at it?
I am,
Oh.
where the application, for some reason, whether it's one item or 25 items, does not meet the requirements for acceptance, but you'd have to spell that out. Where the review was stayed pretty much right from the start, there is really no basis for doing that, so,
There's no basis for.
or not
refusing-
accepting it, or
Accept-
accepting it, either way. No review has commenced because they agreed with having a third-party review, and so you have nothing to base not accepting it, and you have nothing to base accepting it on, because no review.
Except for the fact that that should have been included in, before we accept it, the third-party review. Wouldn't that be the basis for not accepting it? Wouldn't that be the legal basis for not accepting
That's
it?
what the board wanted, was a third-party review.
Right, in which
acceptance.
the applicant also agreed to.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, Tom?
So you've had discussions with Bot Mayor regarding, you said something about coming to some memorializing of an agreement to toll things?
We had a discussion about how the application could be accepted as complete this evening, but give the board comfort that the 65-day clock would not be used as a club on the flip side of acceptance, and that you would have the time to retain a consultant, and that you could ask for extensions if, for example, you asked for information from the applicant and we took time to provide a response.
And, you know.
I'm not suggesting in any shape or form that Attorney Mayer said he could make a decision for the board. This was simply a discussion that he and I had.
But, I mean, I would feel a lot more comfortable if our attorney was here and you guys came to an agreement and that was presented to us before we make decisions here, because as you've just heard, you know, without finding fault, no one's reviewed the application. Now, your position is that staff, I assume, could review it. Staff's position is they want third-party review of it. So nobody's done anything. So my problem is, as a board member, I wouldn't consider accepting a bathroom renovation with no review, and now you want us to review or accept an application for 600 acres. I mean, it just doesn't seem reasonable in my view. If you and Attorney Mayer can work out something where you've got some sort of memorialized agreement, because I'll tell you this, there's been a lot of confusion here between what people said, what people remembered, and I'm not saying anybody's wrong, but I think we all would be better off if we had a writing down and we knew what the dates were and we knew what the terms were. And so I frankly, as one member, don't feel comfortable committing any kind of vote, taking some action that's irrevocable without, you know, without town council coming to an agreement with you guys, the reasonable agreement. And I'm entirely on board with moving the process of getting the third-party review done as expeditiously as possible. Doesn't seem to make any sense to me to delay that. But I think we have two questions and two tracks here. That one we seem to have made some progress on. Maybe people aren't happy with it, but at least we're going in the right direction. But this one, I mean, it seems to me that if you guys have talked, you guys can come up with something. And if you need us to come back and have a third meeting to approve it, you know, or to do whatever we have to do, I would feel more comfortable as a board member, instead of being in the dark here about what I'm going to do. Because if you're going to force me to guess, I'm going to err on the side of caution. And I'm going to say, I've been told by staff that nobody's reviewed it. I'm going to ask to table this right now.
I think that that's helpful, and I thank you for saying that. And I guess my question is whether the other board members share your view of that, and if that is the case, we can try to make something like that happen.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that you want us to go ahead and accept this application tonight, which I appreciate that. And you've stated that, you know, yeah, you'll expend the 65-day clock. I guess my concern is this is an extremely large project. Myself, I'm not comfortable, especially since there's been no review whatsoever of it, without moving ahead without a consultant helping us. So let's say we did, the other thing is, if we did accept this application, now we're into the 65-day clock, even with extensions, whatever. Then we get our consultant on board, and he finds things that were deficient. Then we're stuck. Then we don't have, unless I'm wrong, we really don't have much choice but deny acceptance of the whole thing, and everybody starts over. Personally, I mean, if you're willing to extend the 65-day clock, and we're looking at an expedited timeline to get a consultant on board and move forward with this, I think it would be beneficial to all parties to delay the acceptance till we get the consultant. Then we get the consultant, they can review this, they're already going to know that it's going to be an expedited review. Then we can move forward into the 65-day clock, and chances are, with the consultant on board, we may not have to do any extensions. We're probably looking at the same time frame.
I agree.
Lisa, did you have something you wanted to say?
He covered it, but
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I wouldn't have noticed.
Okay, maybe I'll just take a quick poll. Rick,
I agree with Dana and Tom.
Tom, okay. Mary?
I'm on board with them.
I'm on board with them, too.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
So this is where the board is at. We would not be comfortable proceeding toward acceptance without the third-party review. I think the board has been over really backwards to try to expedite this as quickly as possible. We still don't want to compromise the quality and integrity of the work that we expect to be done.
Very good. Thank you for your time.
So is it my understanding that the application is going to be tabled at this point?
Yes.
I assume we need a motion for that?
If we table it, we would have to have a date to table it to.
When do we expect to have a consultant selected and on board? Last possible date at this time.
Well, the schedule that's laid out has the acceptance hearing on January 30th.
So the first,
No, January 30th is when we make the.
I understand that, but if we're going to table the acceptance, we need the date of the planning board meeting at which we would be accepting.
January 30th.
January 30th, there will be a special meeting.
We're having a special
Okay.
meeting
All
on
right.
January 30th to accept the application.
And that's making a big
under his
assumption,
title.
though.
It is making a big assumption, but if we're making the motion, I think
Right.
that's the date we need to put in
Well,
there.
so let's understand what
This
happens.
is a very aggressive plan that we have. And we all hope that it works, but I think we have to also understand that things might not go as we plan, but we plan on moving as quickly as we can. And I think as, you know, both parties, both the town and the applicant have indicated, we'd rather make sure that we don't make any mistakes on this.
So let me ask a question on the date, just for clarification. If we say January 30th in our motion, right, and January 15th, we understand we can't meet January 30th. What does that do to us?
I think at the 30th, we could, put it on the table, and if it needs to be tabled again, table it again at that time.
But
I
in
think
the,
we
That's
can
part
do
of the
without a
formal way.
three-hour
Okay, now,
conversation.
just a thought, would it be at least, let's say, worst case, we don't have anybody selected come January 30th. I think, to be fair to the applicant, our staff should begin to review this, so we at least have something to go by.
Yeah, certainly, staff has the background and experience to at least start something, but I think right now we should focus on getting the third party in place.
I think the agreement is that we want that third party no matter what.
I understand that, but that's still, I mean, our staff is gonna review it also.
Yes,
But
and I
the
would
thing
like
is,
staff to review as
we've
well.
made a
but-
request that the third party review it.
I understand that.
Yeah, this is a public hearing, so, and it just deals with application acceptance only, so. Sean, name and address, please.
Sean O'Keefe, 163 Mammoth Road. It would be my suggestion, as a resident, that the board consider seriously of having Bart or a member of town council here for your meetings while you're going through this process.
Hello?
Have one.
This is a member of our town council. His name is Tom Frieden.
I'm talking lawyer, not town council.
Town attorney.
Town attorney,
Okay.
okay? So please don't bite my head off. The town council is the town council. This is above us. We need lawyer here, paid for, representing us, so that any questions that you have can be addressed.
I think-
Period.
I think
That's
Bart
all I'm
indicated
saying.
he had a previous engagement tonight, but,
This is, and Mary, you know and I know that this is above us.
yeah.
Okay, well, I assumed you meant town council.
I'm sorry, but that's not what I meant.
Okay.
I meant Bart or a member of the staff that's up there. I would encourage that the board seeks that advice to be here at your, at your beck and call, so that you guys can ask questions procedurally or whatever. You'll feel a lot more comfortable, I'm sure of it. I know I would if I was sitting up there. Thank you.
Okay, Tom.
And Attorney Pollak, you'll speak to Attorney Mayor, and if you can expedite things between the two of you, because if Attorney Mayor feels comfortable with some sort of interim proposal beforehand, I wouldn't be adverse to even having a public have a special meeting if they needed action for us to do it.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're suggesting.
Well, what I'm suggesting is he's represented that he's had a conversation with Attorney Mayor about an alternate way of handling this. And what I'm suggesting is that if they come to some terms that, as the town's attorney, that be brought before, if in order to accomplish that, they need a meeting between now and, I guess, the end of the year, maybe we could accommodate them.
Okay, but we're relevant here, right? It's not just between the two lawyers.
Well,
A lot of communication that's going on between the two lawyers.
They would have to come before the
This.
planning board for the planning board to make the decision.
Right.
No
but-
matter what.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the last couple hours weren't rendered completely
No.
useless. Okay.
I can assure you that Attorney Mayor understands that he works for the board, and I certainly was not making any representation that he felt he could take a decision away from any of you. My question earlier was simply, was the board generally of the opinion that we should put time into some sort of, at least a proposal on completeness of the application and extensions of the review clock, or was it just one member's suggestion that the other board members didn't share? I didn't want to put that time and effort in either on my behalf, on my client's behalf, or on the town's attorney's behalf, if it was only one person's opinion, which I share as a good one, but I didn't want to make the assumption.
So do we still need a motion for?
Okay, I'm just looking at, any more public input on the completeness acceptance? Jack Falvey, microphone right there, please.
Jack Falvey. There's a considerable amount of citizen interest in this project. So there's another party in the room, and that is the citizens of Londonderry. We appreciate the effort that the planning board does in representing us. But by the same token, these are all public documents, and we have reviewed many, many of these documents so far and shared with other experts what the issues are. So I think there should be a citizen input in writing to the planning board on the application, as well as from the third party that's being hired and as well as town staff. So there's another voice in the room. We're not potted plants, and we would like to have an input other than one question at a time in a public meeting. So we'd like to submit some things in writing for consideration of the planning board.
Certainly, and email them to Andre.
Will do. Thank you.
We'll get things taken care of there.
Larry,
Yes.
would it be out of line to request that if there's citizen input submitted to Andre, that it be attributed to specific citizens and not sort of a conglomeration?
Right.
I'm very interested in hearing what people have to say, but
Yes, it'd have to be sent, specific questions with a person's name, address, and everything.
These will all be submitted by me, and I will sign them.
Okay,
I'm a citizen.
so it'll be from Citizen Jack. Mike?
Mike Speltz, 18 Sugar Plum Lane. I think I would urge the board not to accept the application until it has a professional review. We have a capable staff. We have a design review committee that actually took a preliminary look at this. And as Jack pointed out, we've gotten a lot of citizen input. So it isn't that there hasn't been review of this document. It's that we, I think, all agree, we don't feel that it has been a completely competent review. Not that any of us are incompetent, but that the scale and the scope of this project is such that it requires a professional review. So I would be reluctant to see you, come up with a suspension of the time clock that would allow you to accept it based on our, but I think we could agree it might be less than adequate efforts to review this thing.
Right, and that's where we need someone who really, because there's a lot here, someone who can put it all together, because we can take bits and pieces, but we have to work with one whole thing. Tom?
I think Attorney Pollack, correct me if I'm wrong, but you want to have some assurance that the board is authorizing him to start to speak with Bart regarding hammering out some possible guidelines?
Yes, I think there should be communication there.
It
Andre?
would be helpful to have some guidance on that issue from the board.
I think he
Okay.
wants a consensus from the board. Is that what we want to have done, or do we not want to have?
I think I'm going to go to Andre first.
Yeah, I mean, and I truly appreciate, that guidance, but obviously the information that staff has shared with you tonight with regard to the timeline and all that was consistent with the conversations that I've had with legal counsel and felt that this was consistent with the direction that I believe the board set us on November 2nd. So, if I'm hearing the applicant correctly, that there might be some discussion between our legal counsel and him with regard to I guess a secondary timeline. Right now, the schedule that we laid out, and I think I agree with the chairman's characterization of it. It is an aggressive time frame to get a lot of things done in a relatively short period of time, and I think it can be achievable. But in the interim, are we going to then direct our legal counsel to come out with another timeline with regard to the acceptance of the application? And I think that I think that's why we need our third-party reviewer to make sure that, again, all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed, so the board is informed with regard to what it's going to be reviewing from their point after.
I think we have to get into it and maybe as close to the third-party reviewer before we can make any adjustments, so that's
But
right.
if, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're looking for is whether you should bother to talk continue your discussions that you've had with Attorney Mayor.
Yeah, you've got it right. I'm looking for some guidance as to whether or not the board would like us to have those discussions. Should we put that effort in?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair,
No.
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 I
No,
don't-
I'm
I
saying
don't
wait
feel so.
until the, I'm
This is
saying
why
wait
I
until the
asked.
consultant is hired.
Yeah, we have,
Okay,
I
I'll listen
don't
to the
want,
board.
no, we've, to Andre's point, we just laid out a time frame
Yeah.
that we're comfortable with and we've achieved consensus on, and
We're
frankly,
flip-flopping.
I don't want to hear an interjection
If I'm
from
understanding
a side
the
conversation.
discussions, were discussions about extending the clock after we had accepted the application, assuming we accepted it tonight.
Well,
And-
also, whether or not we accept it before we have the consultant on board, whether, and that would include an additional time period beyond the 65-day clock. We, as a board, have agreed that we do not want to see the application to accept it until we have the consultant on board.
Right.
So
Right.
it would not behoove you to have a conversation with our attorney, because even if you two agree, the board has indicated tonight
Right.
that we want to wait until we have that third-party consultant on board
Right,
before we...
but the board has done that without any legal opinion of its own.
I disagree with you.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine.
We
Show
had a
me where we
non-public
had a
meeting
legal
last
opinion that, okay. I guess you got your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Had that motion to table been acted upon?
Not
No,
yet.
not yet.
Hasn't even been,
Yet.
motion to table till January 30th.
Table to January 30th,
Second.
2012. Second by Laura. Any discussion by the board? I think we've had enough. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions, chair votes affirmative. And the scheduled public hearing for application acceptance will be on January 30th, 2012, 7 PM.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, next item we have on the agenda
Is it,
is the business.
Art, is it okay to ask a question on process going forward?
For what?
Move on, I just,
Yeah.
For what,
I'll
Lynn?
talk to you later.
Oh,
It's just- I just,
but, to talk with Andre, why don't we bring it up?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do it now.
before everybody leaves, I don't know if anybody wants to hear or if anybody cares, but I have just a couple of questions on process going forward. You should probably, if you'd like to hear.
He's going to ask Andre the questions, but you may want to hear the answers.
About our application?
It's not, I guess it's about the master plan, you know. I've gone through the master plan, I got a copy of it, and I have a lot of comments on it, and we have a lot of public input on it, too. When are we gonna start talking about that stuff? After
we
it's
accept-
considered approved?
After the
After we consider the application approved?
After application is accepted, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna be another series of meetings and questions and answers and everything else like that, too. And, you know, in points where I don't necessarily agree with their interpretation of the PUD and things like that as well.
Okay.
So,
That would be after application acceptance, and we get into the merit of the application, and that,
Okay.
I think is appropriate to